They called it love. But God saw the control. Your silence was survival, not dishonor. God is not punishing you. He's protecting you from their grip. Blood ties do not override spiritual truth. You were raised in their image, but born in God's. The betrayal wasn't sudden. You were just finally allowed to see it. Her prayers were never for your freedom. They smiled while burying your voice. Their love had rules. Heaven doesn't. God is exposing what you weren't ready to believe. You left the house. Now he's cleansing the lineage. What broke you wasn't the world, it was the women who raised you. You didn't imagine the manipulation. You outgrew it. God delayed the reveal until your soul could stand it. She spoke in tongues, but cursed you in private. The silence in that house was not peace. It was suppression. You weren't the rebel. You were the revelation. That tear wasn't weakness. It was deliverance leaving your bloodline. What they hid under concern was control. She mothered your image, not your identity. You're not disloyal. You're delivered. Her voice was louder than God's in your childhood. You weren't raised, you were programmed. You didn't run. You resurrected. The one who called you difficult feared your discernment. God let you leave so he could let the truth rise. She taught obedience, but never how to be whole. Their unity was your cage. You didn't lose a mother. You lost an illusion. She didn't protect you. She protected her reputation. They raised you on secrets, but heaven just opened the scroll. Your wounds have names. Start speaking them. She feared your freedom more than your failure. You became the scapegoat because you were the soul God would use. What they whispered about you, heaven screamed over you. You weren't loved. You were used to maintain an image. God is dismantling the house they built from your pain. You thought they changed, but God saw the cycle restart. Her love always had expiration dates. She taught submission, not selfhood. You were never truly safe. God was the only refuge. They called it respect, but it was spiritual suffocation. The rules always shifted when you got too close to truth. God heard what they said behind doors you never opened. You loved them deeper than they ever saw you. This isn't exposure. This is your exodus. They weren't protecting you. They were preventing you. You didn't abandon them. You outgrew the version they demanded. God is not punishing them. He's positioning you. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. The hardest goodbye is to a lie dressed in family. You weren't distant, you were discerning. They couldn't mold you, so they called you broken. God is answering the prayers you didn't have language for. Her silence hurt more than any word. You kept shrinking to survive their love. She wore religion like armor and used it like a blade. They were never proud, only possessive. You didn't escape your home. You escaped their patterns. The curse didn't start with you, but it ends with you. You weren't disrespectful. You were discerning demons in disguise. Her control felt like care until you saw the strings. God is uncovering the history you lived but forgot. Their titles don't erase their trauma. You learned shame before you learned to speak. She saw your light. She feared it. They never nurtured your truth, only their narrative. You're not crazy. You're finally conscious. They mocked your tears, but God bottled them. Her protection came with chains. You were chosen by heaven and condemned by blood. She kept you close to dim your reach. The exposure is mercy, not vengeance. That wasn't a mother. That was a manipulator. You broke the silence and shattered their illusion. Your sister mimicked your pain, then mocked your healing. You didn't imagine the rejection. It was inherited. God allowed the betrayal to clarify your calling. They built their peace on your pain. You thought God was silent. He was gathering evidence. Their unity was not godly, it was trauma-bonded. What they did in secret is being shouted in heaven. You're not the problem. You're the prophecy. They called your strength rebellion. You were never their project. You were heaven's purpose. She wept at altars, but wounded you at home. God is not exposing them to shame them, but to free you. Her authority was never divine, just generational control. You are no longer her reflection. You are God's image. You weren't raised in love. You were raised in fear. You're not a traitor. You're a truth teller. She withheld praise because she feared your power. Your departure was holy. She taught you silence, not safety. You've been surviving. Now God's calling you to rise. That house held secrets. Now God holds you. Their love had price. God's love has power. She never apologized, but heaven already vindicated you. This isn't revenge. It's revelation. The truth didn't break you. It baptized you. What she called disobedience was your spirit awakening. God kept receipts, even the ones you tore up. Your freedom felt like betrayal until you could breathe again. You outgrew their control. That's why they turned on you. You weren't hard to love. They were hard to trust. She prayed for change, but not your transformation. Heaven is cleaning the bloodline through your rupture. What they covered up, God is unmasking. You left guilt at the door when you walked out. You are not bound by their brokenness. She created chaos, then blamed you for the storm. They used God's name, but not his nature. God is not asking you to return, just to rise. She feared losing control more than losing you. You were the first truth they couldn't silence. Their alliance depended on your silence. You were not raised, you were restrained. You didn't fall away. You found the light. The mask they wore cracked. You finally saw the real face. They called you dramatic. You were discerning. You begged to be heard. God always listened. That house broke you. Heaven rebuilt you. Your healing humiliates the spirit that raised you. She broke your spirit, not just your heart. What they dismissed, God documented. You were the fire they couldn't contain. That wasn't discipline. That was damage. Her hands raised you. Her words ruined you. What she buried is resurrecting truth. God is not asking you to forget. He's asking you to move. You did not curse them by walking away. You blessed yourself. You don't owe them reconciliation. You owe God your restoration. She taught performance, not peace. You survived more than you speak of. God saw what happened when no one believed you. Her love demanded obedience. God's love demands nothing. You have permission to live unbound. She called it discipline. Your soul still calls it trauma. You've made peace with the truth. Now it will expose them. Her silence screamed louder than her sermons. You weren't their equal, you were their excuse. God broke the pattern with your breath. They won't recognize you now. That's the point. What they built in darkness, God is tearing down in daylight. You were born for this breakaway. No one taught you freedom, but you remembered it anyway. She called your light rebellion, but heaven called it rising. You are the interruption your family feared. Let the truth echo. You survived it. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. She didn't raise you. She ruled you. God waited until you left to reveal who stayed hidden. The exposure isn't punishment. It's protection. You never stood a chance in their circle of control. Their love was loud. Their betrayal louder. The smile was staged. The silence was strategic. You didn't imagine it. You endured it. She loved you, but only on her terms. Their bond was stronger than truth. You walked away from more than a house. You escaped a spell. The lies were generational. You were the rupture. God is stripping their masks, not your mercy. She knew who hurt you and said nothing. Your pain made them powerful. No more. God is not confused by bloodlines. You were the scapegoat for their secrets. She watched you break, so she wouldn't have to. What you survived in silence is now being spoken in heaven. Your clarity cost you your connection. She taught you to lie to yourself to protect her image. The house didn't shelter you. It trained you to shrink. You mistook their control for closeness. She feared your healing more than your heartbreak. God is exposing the loyalty that destroyed you. Their prayers were pretty, but their hearts were political. She saw your truth and chose their comfort. You cried where she laughed. God doesn't call silence peace when injustice lives there. The one who birthed you never blessed you. Your tears were translated in heaven. They called you dramatic. You were simply delivered. The house taught you obedience, not safety. You didn't change. You awakened. Her protection was performance. She kept you in guilt. God kept you in grace. The loyalty you gave will never be returned. You weren't the problem. You were the prophecy. Their secrets are allowed in heaven now. You learned betrayal before you learned boundaries. She never protected your innocence, only her reputation. You've cried for years over people who never repented. Your silence kept their sins invisible. They punished your freedom. God preserved it. The exposure isn't shameful, it's sacred. God's not punishing them. He's prioritizing you. She turned your wounds into her warnings. God waited until you were strong enough to see. You left dishonor, not your destiny. What they called rebellion was your resurrection. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. You were born into bondage, now you're breaking it. They didn't expect you to survive their silence. Her love made you question your worth. You weren't raised in love. You were raised in fear. Their love expired when your truth arrived. You left for peace. Heaven calls that healing. She claimed to pray for you, but only praised herself. God is not silent about your suffering. Her motherhood was a performance. You were the stage. You are not the villain for leaving the lie. They called it family, but it felt like a furnace. She saw your strength and resented it. Your survival threatened their system. You're not cold, you're recovering. The exposure is divine. The release is final. God didn't show you their hearts to shame you, but to save you. She passed down pain and called it parenting. You had to unlearn love. She called it loyalty. You call it trauma. The door that closed saved your spirit. You're not running, you're rising. You didn't become distant. You became divine. She never apologized. God will. Her silence shaped you, but it won't define you. God's revealing what they hid behind. I'm your family. You gave love. They gave conditions. You outgrew their version of you. You weren't angry. You were awakening. She used your obedience to avoid accountability. What they said about you, heaven is reversing it now. You learned to love yourself in the ruins they left. That house was not your home. It was your wilderness. The pain was inherited, but the healing is chosen. She didn't raise a rebel. She raised a revelation. Her lessons were fear in disguise. The silence taught you more than their sermons. You didn't escape. You were exiled for choosing truth. God is healing what she refused to acknowledge. Her cruelty wore scripture like perfume. God gave you vision. They gave you shame. You forgave what they kept repeating. Their exposure is your exodus. The voice they silenced is now your sword. She feared your light because she lived in shadow. What they built from lies is crumbling. You are the new bloodline. They tried to confuse your calling with chaos. God is pulling you out, so the next child won't suffer. She wanted your obedience. God wanted your freedom. You didn't just break out. You broke a curse. God's showing you what your heart tried to hide. You thought you were crazy. You were chosen. Their smiles were spells. You weren't their child. You were their scapegoat. You left behind more than people. You left behind patterns. God is revealing the hands that wounded you in silence. You were never too much. They were too afraid. Her comfort came at your cost. You weren't stubborn. You were sacred. The truth you feared is the freedom you needed. Their exposure is divine justice. You didn't betray them. You blessed yourself. Your healing is the evidence. She cursed your boundaries. God crowned them. They didn't expect you to remember the silence. You stayed too long trying to earn their love. You weren't hard to love. You were hard to manipulate. Her words still echo, but truth is louder. God removed you so you'd remember who you are. You were never safe there. Now you are sacred here. She never honored your soul, only your obedience. You became the version of you they feared most, free. She wanted a servant. God made you a seer. Their love had limits. Yours does not. You walked away, and the heavens opened. You didn't forget. You forgave. Her love was loud. Her truth silent. God isn't late. He's exact. You're not broken. You're birthing. Their secrets couldn't silence your destiny. She wore motherhood like a crown, but ruled with fear. They erased you in rooms you fed. God is revealing the house of harm. You didn't destroy the family. You revealed it. You left. Now love can enter. You were loyal to a lie. Never again. They mourn your distance, not your damage. The day you left was the day you lived. Your boundaries broke their control. You didn't leave bitterness. You left betrayal. Their silence was the proof. Her presence screamed, but heaven whispered peace. God made you holy, not hidden. You survived their love. Now you're becoming yours. They'll call you cold. God calls you called. You saw what they hid. She feared your voice. Now it's prophecy. You were born for this exit. God is rewriting your family from the outside in. If this touched your soul, don't scroll. Comment your favorite quote and subscribe for more.